Well, thank you for inviting me again. I had the pleasure of speaking to the board back in February about the process that we went through in 2018 into the 2019 construction season. And I believe that you had shared that information with the bigger planning committee at this time already.
Yes. Yep.
Well, you had. So what we did, the second step then today was about what our volunteer committees really did. And the information that I had provided was forwarded to you already. So we broke down our committees into 3 areas that we worked on that marketing piece because Little Falls is a tourist town. We're the beginning of the lakes, but we do have the Minnesota Fishing Museum. We have the Charles Lindbergh Home. We have the Pine Grove Zoo, that we are a place where families stop on their way north, or if they're up at the cabin, they come down into Little Falls for things to do during the day. And so we wanted to make sure that people knew that we were still alive and well and welcoming people in. The second component was signage. We wanted to make sure that people coming into town and even our local residents could still get into the downtown area and find the buildings that they needed to find. And then the last piece was where we put the bulk of our energy, and that was into events, because we still wanted to have something to celebrate in Little Falls. We always have a dam festival the 3rd weekend in June, but we wanted to expand on that and just try and connect people so they could see what was going on downtown. Because if you didn't have a reason to try and drive through there, you didn't know what progress was being made. And we just wanted to give a boost to those downtown businesses that were losing business because they didn't have the drive-by traffic on Highway 27. So I broke it down for you into that marketing piece. And the first thing we did was we designed a logo so that we had something to rally around. And that was our focal point for getting information out, that it was a big dig. And it truly was, when we were going that deep down to do all the fiber optics and the sewer and water lines, natural gas, everything that went into that. So we immediately created that Facebook page, which is so easy to do. We made the table tents so that those could be in restaurants that were promoting the things that were going on, and the concerts, whatever else was going on. We made up some posters. We just had that the newspaper did wonderful things for us on a regular basis. Every week they had something in the newspaper that talked about what section was being worked on, a few pictures, so people could get a visual of what area of town was going to be worked on next. We spent a lot of time worrying about what was going to happen with our employees trying to get to their jobs. And that was really a lot of wasted time, because we didn't need to shuttle people in from outlying parking lots. They found their way into their places of work. Our government center was in the middle of the construction zone, and there's about 250 people that work in that building alone. So that was a concern for us to try and get people in. And it was a little bit of a precursor to getting people to learn how to work from home, which has become very applicable to what we've been doing now since last March. The MnDOT did go door to door and talk to all of our businesses downtown as we got into the planning process. And businesses were given a $500 stipend because their sidewalks were being tore up and their front door was being, at some point in time, probably wouldn't be open to the public. So our businesses were well versed on what was going to happen. It was the larger community and the convention people or visitor people that we were looking for. We did a little bit with our back doors because our businesses couldn't as readily access the front doors. By law, MnDOT has to allow access to businesses while the construction is going on. But we are so used to going in back doors of many of our businesses, it wasn't a very big deal for us to start using those, not only as employee entrances, but for customers to come in. And we were trying to get some consistent signage throughout that downtown area where back doors were accessible. So if people were in a parking lot, they could see a bright sign that said, you know, enter here. That piece, we just never got it off the ground, but we had spent some time thinking about how we can make something that people could readily identify as it enters into our buildings. And in the end, it was really maybe a month that our downtown businesses were severely impacted by having the road dug up a lot. They nicked a gas line, of course, in a couple places because that's going to happen through construction. But for the most part, it went pretty smooth. The signage component piece was that if we couldn't be driving on the roads that we normally drive on, how do we get to the businesses that we were trying to get to? And again, when MnDOT did a lot of things on the exterior of the town. They got to the far edges on the city limits and they were directing people out of town already or around town. And that wasn't necessarily needed as early as those signs went up. And I had encouraged the board to be on MnDOT a little bit, because just because they put signs up, it doesn't mean they're right. And we had totally shut off part of our downtown for months when it didn't have to be. And we finally figured out that the sign on the far west side of town was directing people away, telling them that businesses were, that there wasn't access to our businesses. But MnDOT was helpful. You know, they're the experts at this. This is what they do for a living, and they want to get it done as quickly as possible. The hangups came when we would have MnDOT in the middle of the dirt pile along with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, because they were taking soil samples a lot. And there were days when it just felt like nothing got done and our construction crews were sitting, waiting, idling to get something done. But we had to follow procedure, and you just take that all with a grain of salt. But the piece that we really put a lot of effort into was our events, and that's where a lot of our money was spent. We tried to do a series of 12 concerts on Thursday nights, and we tried to bring people downtown. So we were initially setting them up on the streets and parking lots, and we were right adjacent to the construction zones. And the construction people were working till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. So we still had huge belly dump trucks going through. We had earth movers going through there, and it was noisy. And sometimes it was a little bit, the dirt that filtered through wasn't real comfortable to be sitting out on. And combine that with the heat of the day on that asphalt and parking lots, it just wasn't as much of a enjoyable thing as what we had hoped that it was going to be. But we brought in some food trucks because we didn't think that our restaurants would be able to handle it. And that kind of backfired on us a little bit. The businesses weren't very happy that we did bring in additional food trucks, and some of those food trucks had liquor licenses, so the bars weren't able to do liquor sales. But in Little Falls, you can't have liquor on the streets, so any bar that would have been selling something would not legally be able to put it on the sidewalk anyway. But instead, we had a food truck out there selling beer and wine that people were walking through the entire area with. We were nicked a little bit because we didn't have healthy food in our food trucks for some of our families that were there. We tried to make these concerts kid-friendly and family venues. To some extent it worked, but when you're doing a hard rock concert or even the Johnny Holmes concert, those weren't necessarily family ones. When we had more acoustic guitars and some of the local groups performing, then it was much more kid-friendly. And at the end, we ended up moving a couple of the events into the parks. But this was extremely expensive. Johnny Holmes was over $7,000. Our bands pretty much ran us between $500 and $1,000. And it was just got to be a huge price tag. The setup for these concerts every week in a different location with different volunteer groups became a kind of a point of frustration. And a lot of this fell on our Convention and Visitors Bureau to get that stuff put together. And that came through in the evaluations that we just need to have a bigger leadership team to do this. But city staff was great. They were trying to move picnic tables and garbage cans and dumpsters and the portable stage every Thursday afternoon in the middle of the construction zones. And then Friday morning, it had to be out of there again because construction was still going on. So in the long run, those concerts probably weren't the best thing. We were also competing with some of our nonprofits that normally did summer concerts as part of their fundraising, and we didn't make some friends in that arena either. But all in over the 12 weeks of concerts, we only had one night that it rained out a little bit, and we were able to move that one indoors to our Sprout facility. Our businesses themselves did some cross promotions with sales things. That worked to some extent, but we didn't see a lot of new customers coming downtown, because if I'm a tourist somewhere and I have to crawl over construction barriers to get to a store, it's very likely that I'm not, because I don't know where I'm going to end up. So our local residents did their best to shop. And again, this was a little bit of a training ground for what our businesses went through in the last 10 months, is that you needed to be able to have a very good presence on Facebook, online. You had to learn how to ship product out to people, and just how to market yourself when you're doing it in an age of electronics. So in the long run, we can look back now and say that it was a good thing that we learned how to do some of this stuff in baby steps, because when it got to be March and we had to do it this way, we were maybe better poised to do it. We talked about some resources, that it was costly. Our Little Falls Economic Development Authority put the first $10,000 on the table, and that was in support of businesses in the construction zone. They didn't put a lot of ties onto that, so we were able to use it for marketing, for signage, for whatever that we needed to have done. Our St. Gabriel's Hospital Health Foundation threw $1,000 in the pot, and a number of our service organizations came through with funding. And at that point, there still was a lot of charitable gaming dollars out there floating around. With so many of our bars and restaurants being closed in the recent months, there's probably not that big pool of money to draw from anymore. We were able to work with Thrivent Financial. We have 2 big offices for Thrivent here in Little Falls, and anybody who's a customer of Thrivent, you get $250 to give. It's a simple piece of paper to fill out, and you can give that to a charity or a nonprofit, anything that you want to try and help support in your own community. And we found a lot of people with Thrivent financial ties that were able to put that money on the table. We did work with Five Wings Arts Council, and Region 5 were at the table as well. They helped fund some of the things we were doing for children's games and art projects and things that the kids were doing during our Thursday night concerts. Camp Ripley was a great partner through all of this for us. They would show up with their inflatables and their climbing walls, those things that they normally bring into county fairs and stuff. So they were with us quite a few times as well. And I ended up there with what the positive outcomes were for our community, that even though this was a labor-intensive coordination of a lot of people in a short time frame, we really learned that we have more volunteers in our community than we thought. We thought we had about the same 75 volunteers that do everything in town. And through this setting up for concerts and 12 nights of groups of volunteers stepping up and saying, yes, my business can do this, or yes, our service organization can, we widened our volunteer pool considerably, and we're looking forward to utilizing those volunteers a lot more as we go forward. And then, of course, we have a beautiful new streets. We have new sidewalks, new storm and sanitary sewers, buried fiber optics, power lines, new water lines, and enhanced bicycle lanes. So the pain that we went through, we are reaping the benefits of it now, and will hopefully for years to come. So Highway 27 is the east-west corridor through Little Falls. It connects Browerville out into the Onamia area. It's one of the things that Walmart drew an oval around when they put one of their 5 largest stores in the country in Little Falls. So we do know we get a lot of traffic on that route. So now we have 3 years, and they're going to dig up north and south route through town. So hopefully I won't be working at the chamber anymore when we do that one. Do you have questions for me?
Jeb, we are looking into, our group has kind of discussed doing some more infrastructure type projects through the committee, and then some advertising with the Explore Minnesota Crisis Grant funding. What was that? Oh, sorry. I thought you were trying to speak. This thing is kind of glitching a little bit for me on my end. So we were thinking about applying to the IRRRB grant, which is a matching grant up to $50,000 with 25% of our portion of the match can be in-kind donations. And labor and materials, the types of things with our project that we were thinking about doing was, a historical walking tour, some benches and bike racks, possibly resurfacing parking lots, creating signage and possibly some kiosks to distribute some information. As far as the event side of it goes, I don't know that we've really explored anything into like throwing events during our construction period, but would you say that, how would you kind of go about coordinating a community project on that scale of, reaching out to people and tapping into funding sources? And would you have any advice on that?
We have a lot of service organizations in town, and they were really generous with being able to step up, not only with cash, but with bodies. And they came to the table with different ideas about what needed to happen in town because they live in different areas. And many of those service organizations had their own parks or projects that they had worked on. So they understood that piece of start to finish on a project. So that might be a good starting point for you. We already have kiosks in town that our Convention and Visitors Bureau takes care of. And those are just very easy to keep updated. It's not electronic because they're in our historic downtown. But it's just getting information in there. And there's a number of people that have keys. So anything dated signage just makes me nuts. So any poster that's dated needs to come down right away. So things can flip out pretty quickly. But in terms of getting walking paths and that types of things through, that's a much bigger city project on, but how are you going to get the land and is it accessible and can you mark as in, can you write on there that this is a trail, not how do you market it as in promoting it, but can you actually use the property that you're looking at? I don't know if that answered your question or not, but bike racks, we've got them all over Little Falls, and they're fun. The one by the bakery looks like a cupcake, and the one by the Lindbergh House looks like a plane, and the one at the library looks like a book rack. And so it is fun. It gets to be art, and that's where some of the dollars came through, that it wasn't just a bike rack. It was a piece of art that doubled as a bike rack. So funding sources were available for that. A lot of that came through Five Wings Art Council. And I would think you would have something comparable in your area that would cover that. Because we're 5 wings, we're 5 counties right here in central Minnesota. I think it mirrors what our Region 5 economic development is.
Yep, we are able to access the Five Wings Arts Council grants here as well. We did that for our Music in the Park, which was interesting that you talked about the concerts that you tried to attract people to town. We do a Music in the Park series every summer. This year we had to do it virtually, but I think that we're able to hold it in the park next year. That'll be a great way to draw people to town, but I'm not sure about things opening back up to the point of trying to pre-plan some events at this point.
Yeah, it is. It's just great though. If the road could get done while businesses are still partially shut down, it might be a mixed blessing there.
Linda, would you have any questions for Deb as a business owner? Some concerns that you might have that she might be able to address?
Good evening, Deb. This is Linda Peoples.
Hi, Linda.
I own a business on the main corridor here in town, and it was interesting for you to note that MnDOT has to keep the businesses open. I'm one of the businesses in town that will have to shut down. I do not have a secondary access, simply because my home is attached to my building.
Okay.
So, from a fire standpoint, they could always, if there's a fire in the building, they could always go through my kitchen. But,
yeah.
I can't very well put a sign up that says, hi, flip the laundry from the washer to the dryer as you come out. So, it affects me differently than it does a lot of the buildings on Main Street. we're concerned from a backdoor access about the traffic because our businesses use the alleys for deliveries.
Mhm.
So to encourage pedestrian traffic at the same time that we have delivery trucks, and sometimes as large as a semi, is concerning to us. Do you have any suggestions? Do your back doors back up to an alley, or do they back up to a street?
They back up to a big parking lot. Little Falls has put big parking lots on the back sides of all of our blocks in our downtown area. And what we found was that, like, the beer companies would send in a smaller van. They weren't sending in the semis. They've dealt with road construction too, and they just know it's easier to come in with a smaller vehicle. And we saw deliveries being made much earlier in the day from our Burnix, Viking Coke, besides the beer companies that were coming in with semis in downtown all the time. I don't quite know what our restaurants did because those are usually larger semis that come in, but it didn't seem to be an issue. Backing up, did MnDOT tell you that you cannot have access to your front door?
Yes.
Because it was our understanding that they even put in temporary rubber sidewalks on days that it would maybe have been a day or two that someone would have had a real dicey front door. But for the most part, people could still access businesses that didn't have a back door on them.
MnDOT has talked about putting a temporary sidewalk in where possible, but in our case, on the road that we're on, they are digging down 6 foot at my building foundation.
Mhm.
And that will be all the way across the street, and they're digging down 6 foot in front of the foundation at the building across the street. So will be very difficult to even put in a temporary sidewalk during that part of the construction. But when you talk about things that you did to help the businesses downtown, you mentioned earlier a $500 stipend that you provided to some of the businesses. Did that come from that original $10,000 that came from the city of Little Falls and your charitable gambling, or did that come from a different source?
That came from MnDOT. And each of the business owners got a piece of paper. It had to be notarized that they were indeed the business owner. And that check came almost a year ahead of time from the construction. And I know that because we owned a business downtown that was impacted, and we got a check from $100 or $500 from MnDOT. It was an easement, I believe is what they called it, temporary easement.
Yes, yes. And the property owners have already, pardon me, the property owners have already received those stipends, yes.
Mm-hmm. Didn't do a whole lot for us, but it was $500.
Well, and because of the pandemic, I'm sure that most of our businesses did not set that aside for additional advertising. My guess is that paid the water bill or the electric bill or something with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the pandemic and because we're unsure of any shutdowns that might occur in the next, 6 months or 8 months or whatever, what recommendation do you have that would help us advertise our businesses now as well as in the future? Because, we all know it's going to happen. What type of advertising program would Little Falls Chamber suggest that we look at, that we could start now and carry through the summer?
Mm-hmm. That shipping, being able to ship packages, that flat rate stuff that the post office is able to do. Just a minute, please. And we saw being able to give that customer service Have good pictures on your website. When you get new product in, get those pictures out there and develop that customer list. If they want to be on an email when you do get something in, or you have a special sale going on, to just do whatever you can to keep putting yourself in front of your regular loyal customers that you know will come back and patronize you through thick and thin. We also sent a big message out that this is a short-term construction, but now these businesses are going to have an assessment for 10 years on their property taxes to pay for this. So we wanted to remind people that even though the whole town was impacted, our downtown people, this wasn't just one summer. This is 10 years out that they're going to still be paying for this project. The other thing we saw that people were doing more cross-selling and changing their product lines a little bit. So that they would supplement. If you were a clothing store, we saw a lot of sunglasses coming in and a lot more jewelry. So you were selling the whole outfit. Didn't always make the jewelry stores happy that were 2 doors down, but you could buy the whole outfit online with your earrings and your necklace and get it out the door in one package. The Good Bookstore was doing more things with their authors, and they were highlighting authors online, doing little podcasts like this, so the author could read part of the book to generate some interest in it. Boy, and if anything's easy to ship, it's a book. You don't have to worry about it getting damaged in transit too often. But again, just that message that we're here, we're open, we want to give you good customer service. And a little bit of guilt. If you want us here next year, you kind of need to come and shop us now when it's not as convenient. And that's the message we've been sending out through the whole pandemic, to shop local. So hopefully that will continue on. About how many businesses are impacted, Brielle? Do you have an idea about how many businesses?
Let's see here. I would say around 30 businesses, 30, 35 businesses. I'd have to look at a map and narrow it down. Yeah, but our main street's pretty busy and pretty filled up.
You know, if you want a tattoo bad enough, you made it through the construction to go get one. So.
There you go. I have one final question, if I may. You mentioned what I would define as co-op advertising. Did the chamber coordinate the co-op advertising, or was it the businesses themselves? And did they try and do something like down in the metro area, or did they center their advertising on more local residents, area residents, Region 5, whatever?
It was very much local. We have a large art co-op downtown. It's called the Shops of Little Falls, and they have room for 50 vendors in there. So what they did was develop slips, and it was coupons that if you bought at the women's clothing store, there was a coupon in there for something off at the baby store. There might have been something off at one of the jewelry stores, but they did this package deal if you were coming to downtown anyway, and it was pretty much ran by the streets. So if you were on First Avenue anyway, the stores on First Avenue, stop in and get a massage or get your hair cut while you're here, that it was more that piece that we put it back on them to play nice with their neighbors. And it seemed to work out okay. We do have that regional baby store in downtown Little Falls, and she draws from all over central Minnesota. So she did okay with shipping things out, and her gift registries were online, and it was just easy to buy something online, and she shipped it straight to the intended recipient. She really set the standard for us. And as a retailer, she learned how to do that, and she helped other retailers downtown pick up that piece. The chamber was like, oh, thank you for doing that. And how can we replicate that in our other businesses? But we didn't do any metro advertising at all. And then of course the Little Falls Arts and Crafts Fair is so pivotal, and that's always that second weekend or first weekend after Labor Day. We were pushing things out on our Facebook page for the fair heavily because we wanted to let people know that our vendors were coming. We want to put their minds at ease. I was posting pictures of streets as they were getting completed so vendors could visualize the new sidewalk where they would be setting up on, and then to just really let our shoppers know that we are still here. When you invite 125,000 people into town for 2 days, you want them to come and you want them to know it's going to be a good experience. And we were very close to being done on the west side of town. We had to move part of our fair into a different street, but it ended up working out better than it had before. So it all went well. But that arts and crafts fair was very pivotal in getting the word out to how Little Falls was progressing. And that's an important piece because MnDOT will do so much on their website about what sections and what blocks they're working on next. But that really fell on the Chamber and the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the city to some extent to make sure that map was accurate, that was being put out, that whatever blocks were done or where you would anticipate that businesses would be a little more congested than otherwise.
Yeah, Deb, that's awesome. How many people do you think visited your Facebook page? Was it well? I mean, could you see was it visited often and shared a lot, or I mean, it was totally worthwhile?
Yeah, it is. Our arts and crafts fair page is probably 15,000 people that follow that all the time, and they keep pushing it out. So we really saw some numbers go up quite a bit. The Convention and Visitors Bureau, being we're separate in our community, that the Chambers crosstown from our CVB, they're the ones who truly market the community. So they were the ones that were pushing it out more. And people, when they Google Little Falls, they generally go to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, pops up first. So their website generated more numbers than ours did. Our chamber members went to us because it's out in front of them a lot more. So if they're pushing things out to their in-laws, it might have been through our website instead.
So like the Big Dig page, I mean, people were utilizing that then?
They were, and people were commenting after concerts. We kicked off with Johnny Holmes, and that was a really big name that people knew, and we had a few hundred people that came into the downtown, and that was baptism by fire. We did end up getting that one pulled off, just finding electricity for bands and where the stage is set up and temperamental artists. But it went okay. But yeah, we had very little criticism. We actually had hoped that we would be able to carry through our concert series one a month going into the summer of 2020 because we learned so much in 2019. And then when COVID hit, we ended up canceling everything that was planned. If we pick it up again in 2021, I don't know. What we modeled our concert series after was Summertime by George in St. Cloud, which is so huge and so successful. They get 15 to 20,000 people at those concerts every week, every Wednesday night, all summer long. We didn't need quite that many people to come and consider it successful, but people weren't going to St. Cloud. They were staying with us instead of traveling that distance. So we thought we were serving our community well.
So from the business owners that are on the call, do you think that it would be helpful to have maybe a panel of local businesses that have done well to put their do online sales and things like that? Do you think that'd be something that our membership would participate in? Hearing from a panel of local retailers on tips how to navigate the online world, because that's something that even right now is relevant.
Is there anyone that does a lot of online? I mean, Victual, he puts up a ton of pictures, but we sell prescriptions online, but nothing else. So I don't know. I mean, it's probably something we all should be doing better at.
Right. No, we don't sell anything online at all. I'm sure that there's some success in that, but I feel like there's a lot of things that you have to touch, or like even with clothing, I'm inspired that worked out. I can understand how it would work for children's clothing, that's one size fits all, but I like to try stuff on. I think a lot of people do. So gifts, but I love like the book idea. I can see how that could work, like having someone come and read it, but I'm sure there's someone out there. No one's coming to mind as to who to lean on for good shipping or sales, online sales at the moment.
We have the new member Lakeside Loot, and he does a lot of he gets a lot of like overstock from the Target stores, and then he sells some of it in store, but then what he's not able to sell in store, he sells online. So he might have some experience in that. I know that Amy Swenson from the Backyard Greenhouse, she's been doing quite a bit with her website and social media marketing. And if we had some people that we could highlight, I'm sure that collectively their knowledge on getting things online could help people get in that mindset of maybe changing the way that they offer their business. In addition to once it opens up, allowing people back in, but who knows at what point, the pandemic will end and that will allow people to come back into stores, or with the construction, how accessible or convenient it'll be for shoppers to physically come into stores. I think that might be something that we could look into at the chamber on setting up some type of panel. If you guys have any suggestions on names, or if anything comes up, just send it my way and I can.
It seems like a relatively inexpensive thing we could do if someone was interested, we could show that we're really trying to help people. So, it's definitely something I would attend if we found somebody I thought was interesting.
And there might be someone at Central Lakes College that would be able to facilitate that for you in their marketing.
I have a question. I am curious with the marketing component. Did you have a timeline of 8 months out, 9 months out, 7 months, kind of like a countdown of what should be done? And if not, did you have, would you suggest that is created? And secondly, how soon did you start to advertise? And I don't mean necessarily advertising our individual business. I mean to say, like, we are open for business. I think that's the message, that we don't want anyone to assume that because of the construction, we're just shut down.
What triggered Little Falls getting our butts in gear and planning was when Brainerd, when 6th Street or whatever the main drag is coming into town to the T at the water tower, when all of a sudden that construction hit and they realized they hadn't done anything and they were really scrambling up there. So we started in like August of 18 in anticipation of spring of 19. We kicked off, once MnDOT came through and started talking to our businesses individually, the word was out. It got spread like wildfire that this was really happening. And it made us, it was a call for action then. We really kicked off the first of it at our Santa Parade the day after Thanksgiving. We had MnDOT had some trucks in the parade. We had you saw pictures of our cone costumes, that there were people that were in the parade wearing their cone costumes and handing out information about the Big Dig and getting them to see that logo and understand that that was what we were going to be rallying around. Our next big touch point with the public was the Easter egg hunt at our historic mansions. We had about 2,500 kids there, and add 3 to 6 parents for every kid or adult for every kid that was there. It was an enormous crowd. We were handing out information at that point as well that things were starting. By then we already had our first concerts booked. So we had that first June 6th concert that we were kind of targeting on. And then it was kind of a slow process. They took trees down, they futzed around. It felt like it took forever to get some of the measuring things done. And then when they finally broke down ground, it felt like we were already 2 months into what we had considered the construction season before they really put a shovel in the ground. So we were a little ahead of ourselves in anticipating that we were going to be closed off more than what we were.
It sounds like you really did focus on your locals, your chamber members, trying to have, the Easter egg hunts and stuff that's in town. And you mentioned that you didn't go to the metro, but how far of a radius did you have a radius of how many miles you felt that you should try to remind people that you will be open, or did you really focus locally?
The in-house or close-up marketing goes to St. Cloud and Brainerd. It's those 2 markets that we would hit as part of Little Falls. A lot of our chamber members, because we're right in between the two of them, are St. Cloud or Brainerd, those bigger businesses. So we feel that that's really our service market as well.
Okay. So we would probably look at Brainerd as one of our larger areas, and I don't know, Cross Lake, and what would be our areas, local advertising areas that we'd want to get the word out to? Brainerd to Baxter for sure.
And up to Emily and Outing, obviously, because they're
Yep, Outing.
members, and then over to Deerwood and
Mhm.
maybe into Aiken. I don't know how much. I mean, we have some members in Aiken now, so maybe spreading to that.
We have a lot of shoppers from Aiken. A lot of people
that's
that live in Aiken come here to do their shopping.
so yeah, we should hit that then.
Brielle, do we know what day? Like I've heard several different times that they'll start after the 4th of July. Is that still predicted, or is it not? Is it fuzzy?
From the
Their
last
start date?
that I've heard, it is after the 4th of July parade is when they were hoping to start the construction. But then if starting means, cutting down a few trees and 2 months of pre-work, July, August, September, it could be up into September when we really start to see the project kick off, it sounds like then, Deb.
And Deb, did you use how did you get to the big dig and the logo? Did you use funding to come up with that, or did you hire a marketing team, or was that a committee?
I think someone was just playing with logos, because we had a bunch of different ones, and they went out to the committee saying, what do you think? And someone said, I can do better than this. And they pulled it together and it looked good and it worked. Yeah, so we didn't pay anybody for a logo.
And if you could do it all over again, would you do, I mean, it sounds like you were a little bit iffy on the events. So if you didn't use events, how would you split your money between marketing and signage? 50-50?
Probably more the marketing. I would probably go 40-60 marketing, 60% signage, 40. We had grandioso plans for marketing, and once you started putting your dollars into signage, it really ate up the money quick. That it's costly to make a sign and put it up, even though we've got a little sign company right here in town that was being very generous with this pricing. It's still, the electronic sign board from the high school did a lot more. And unfortunately, in Little Falls, we have sign ordinances that prohibit places like our banks that have electronic signboards to say, Johnny Holmes concert tonight, they couldn't do that because you cannot do off-premise advertising. So our hands were really tied where we could put up even temporary signs. And it got to the point where it just went up, and the city understood. There were a few residents that cried foul every time they got a chance to, or would come around and take pictures and then take the signs down because they were illegal signs. So it was just a person being a person. That, yeah. Every town needs one of those. But
so you mentioned that behind most of the businesses are parking lots. Would you say that those parking lots were at capacity, or did they have to come up with secondary parking lots, or were they enough?
No, they were enough. And that was a concern too, that we were encouraging businesses to have their employees park a little bit further away so that those spots that were closer in were available for paying customers. And it really didn't get to be an issue. It was something we watched pretty closely, because if we knew we had employees parking where we had asked them not to, we had a handle on that and a plan to say, you really can't park here anymore. We need that for customers. And it wasn't an issue.
And if you had a guess, or do you have any feedback whatsoever on what the businesses would say they were down? Were they down for business by a great margin? Were they pretty plateaued? What was the feedback you have on their numbers?
It depends on who they were and what products they had to sell. I think our bars, after, the bars do more business after 10 o'clock at night than they do during the day. So if they had that 10 to 2 when they were able to make the bulk of their money, they were probably fine. I think people put off going downtown to the dentist. Our government center was in the middle of our construction project as well. It wasn't in the deep dig area, but it was in the resurfacing area. People still needed to get to the county to get their work done. And with retailers, what their expectations were, we never had that conversation up front, that if you are able to, can you survive on a 30% drop in sales in the month of July and August? We did more with Minnesota Power, encouraging businesses to get their light fixtures swapped out so electric bills would be less. And some of that too, if you have a really old ice machine, maybe it's time to swap that out, that there's some energy savings, there were some rebates, trying to get out ahead of what their normal operating costs were and what they could cut back on.
Good point. I mean, there's two ways to make it, to have money. Either you reduce your expenses or you make more money. We can all say we know what it feels like to make less money. So I don't know if that's a chamber role or not, to try to remind some of those energy savings, or Minnesota Power's come around before and done audits. Maybe inviting them to come back would be nice.
I think that
And some of it,
oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Something
No,
that
go ahead.
would be to put it into context for our business owners, because a lot of those things are included in our newsletter, and I talk with people about them in conversation. But I think that if we maybe wrote something up for the local paper and put it into context, like, in preparation for the upcoming construction and an expected loss of sales or decrease in foot traffic, maybe look into this or that, or, this grant is available now, which will help you. I don't know. I would think that business owners would be forward looking in that way, but maybe they wouldn't think about it right away if it's not put into that context with the energy savings. I don't know that that would click right away, that, oh, now's the time to do this because of this.
Well, being a bar owner and just replacing an ice machine, it was unbelievable what both our water bill and the electric bill reflected by doing something as simple as that. The other thing with employees, a lot of our downtown businesses maybe had 2 or 3 employees. They're not big stores downtown. And what did you have for those employees to do if they didn't have a customer standing in front of them? Because you can always clean. Got time to lean, you got time to clean. But to teach them how to go online too and update websites and Facebook pages, and how to merchandise and make your windows look attractive and interesting and enticing. And just even sending out emails to your regular customers saying that something new came in, to continue that conversation with your regular customers was important.
That's a good point. Brielle, is there any interior designers in the chamber?
Not off the top of my head, but I can look at our membership list and maybe reach out to some that might know of one.
Mm-hmm. I know a student that is one of our past employees, just finished school with marketing psychology. So it is about how you place things. And it'd be fun for her to have an intern project or something, to be able to go into the stores to if our windows aren't needed, no one's gonna be driving in front of our windows, and we're gonna have our back entrances, potentially, we'd have to rearrange our whole room. We'd have to create a whole new entrance. And I think that I would definitely need help on that, or gladly take help on that.
Yeah, if you can send me her information, I can reach out and talk to her about some type of internship program. I know that there are some available if we applied for funding. It could potentially even be like a partially paid internship, and maybe just work it like a consultation with businesses, and have the businesses sign up with a time and a date that works for them before a certain date, so they'd have time to implement the changes before the construction. That's a good idea, Jonna.
We were able to get an intern through Region 5 that was kind of that marketing person too, and they split their time between our Convention and Visitors Bureau and our art gallery downtown. And they were young and they had fresh ideas and they were very tech savvy, and it really really was a boost. It made us see what we weren't doing.
Well, also, so Nancy Evans, I've invited you. We have discussed a couple of things with the backdoor beautification of businesses, making them a little bit more appealing to shoppers or welcoming to people that might be coming in through an alternate entrance. Can you talk a little bit about the gardening club and kind of projects that you do throughout the community and some of the resources that your club has available to you? Oh, I think you'll have to take it off of mute. Should be right on the bottom of your screen there. Just click that microphone.
Got it.
Yeah, we've
Can
got
you
it.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we do not have resources. We are totally self-funded and raise our money by selling our own garden plants, which is kind of silly. we were discussing, can we do our Main Street pots? That's our biggest project each year. Can we do that in alleys? And when you're looking at delivery trucks and you're looking at customer traffic back there, it could be quite difficult. We lost one pot this summer just off the bar stock parking lot. Someone backed into it and smashed our pot.
Mm.
So we're not sure that we're going to be a lot of help. We could offer to plant some things if businesses would be willing to take care of them themselves, so that we're not another vehicle coming through regularly to water pots. So we weren't sure. I'm here to see if you have ideas of things that we can do to help dress up those back entrances. But we were a little uncertain that we were going to be able to offer much.
Okay. What about in terms of after the construction is finished and the sidewalks are newly redone and it's a fresh, clean slate? That's also something that we've considered writing into our grant project, is, you know, the before, during, and after construction, what we can do to help the businesses. And I think that the front sidewalks are still something to keep in mind for the after construction part.
Obviously, for visibility, if we could somehow get hanging pots instead of corner pots, that would be best. But how to water them becomes an issue. We've already checked and we can't get water up light posts because there's no water running down Main Street. It's all in the back of the building. So then we looked at some pots that would be much bigger than what we have currently to make them more visible. And they can be a self-watering, which takes a lot of the labor out of it. They are about $600 to $750 per pot. So that's kind of a handicap to us. We thought we could maybe go to businesses and ask for donations, but I understand businesses are going to be stressed as is.
Mm-hmm. So with the
and then MnDOT has to approve anything you put into those handicap access corners. They have overlooked our smaller pots, and we were told if we try to put bigger pots, they may have something to say about that.
So as far as directly on buildings, is that anything that you've discussed with any of the business owners, maybe doing planters in windowsills? Or
we have not, but that's an interesting idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Any chance your high school has a greenhouse? Have it a school project?
Pretty sure they don't. The community college does, but it's not in Crosby.
So you mentioned that funding was an issue. With the funding that we currently have available, which is around $5,000, which would be matched. So we have the opportunity to do up to a $10,000 project, and then we can add on if we're able to secure 25% of that can be in-kind donations and labor and materials. So if you were willing to volunteer some hours into maintaining pot planters and things like that, it would be an option to write in some windowsill planters onto our grant application for the streetscapes beautification of Main Street, either in the back entrances or in the front entrances. Depending on how much additional funding we're able to get and where you would place them. We'd obviously need some costs and quotes on materials, and then volunteer hours that would take to maintain them. But those are all things that can be written into the grant as our portion of the match, which would grow it, how far those dollars can be stretched.
You have already talked that you would prefer something closer to the buildings, tied to the buildings, rather than the intersection pots.
Well, if it poses a problem with MnDOT and it becomes too cumbersome with all the regulations that they have,
it's an alternative.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we would be very interested in that. We've had this by downtown, and we love to garden.
And you probably have a good eye for where good locations for flowers and planters and things would be in downtown. Okay. All right.
As the road was redone in Little Falls, we no longer had curb cuts at the corner, but rather the new ADA required, it's almost like a fan on the corners. So that starts to slope quite a ways closer to the buildings than we had anticipated. You notice it when the sidewalk is a little slippery in the winter.
And then
We also found that many of our back doors were not handicapped accessible. And that was something we were aware of, but we really did not expect businesses to change their back entrances to make them handicapped accessible. But it was something, again, to be aware of. If you're counting on that, there's some customers that wouldn't be able to come in. Okay.
I believe that the city was looking into some IRRRB demolition grants that had some loose wording into internal demolitions of buildings. They wouldn't sponsor any specific individual business, but if it could be, say, a project block, say a couple of businesses on that block agreed to do the renovations, they could apply for that portion of the grant that would raise enough to give like $2,000 matching to each business to do the internal demolition. But again, it would be up to the business owners to agree to invest into their business in that way, for the city to be able to look into that as one of the options that we had discussed when Matt Hill and I met with Chris Ishmael from the IRRRB. But that would be on the city's end.
Brielle, who did you say that had the contest for the backdoor entrances or had a monies for that? Was that Little Falls? That wasn't Little Falls?
We didn't have a contest, no.
No, it wasn't a contest?
No, we were just encouraging people. We had started a conversation with Walmart about getting a flower pot for each back door. So it was that visual piece that, yes, this is where I can enter. And we were too late in the season for them to order anything special for us. And they didn't have enough left on their shelves to accommodate what we needed.
I guess I see it like as I'm very visual. So I see it like whatever that, not a stop sign, but if it was the opposite of a stop sign, because obviously we want to encourage people in. So whatever that color is that we keep saying, we're open. And then like you said, if there was something on the back door, I don't think our back doors all need to be painted yellow, but if there was some continuity that yes, as you're driving down the alley, this is a business that has access without me having to put a trellis out there and pave it. I mean, there's a lot of expense that I could definitely have But after last year with construction, this year with COVID, I just, it's not feasible. So I don't know if we can have someone paint our back doors, but not everyone has a back door that has a paintable spot. So I don't know what it is, if it's a flower pot or not, but I think that's a good, I like that idea of the continuity of everyone having the same thing.
Because we had even talked about something like a swag that would go around the upper door frame. So you could see it. Something on the ground isn't quite as visible from a distance. But if it was a brightly colored flower swag across the top of those doors, it would have popped.
What if it was like a shop small flag that you just put in a little flag holder outside of your door?
Something as simple as that.
Yeah, shop small here, you know, enter here.
When I went to Bayfield, Wisconsin, every single one of their light poles had a shop small on it, and it had a different business listed underneath it. So right on Main Street, you were just like constantly reminded, shop small, shop small.
Yeah, I think that would work well for the backdoor visibility and consistent message throughout. And that's something that, you know, with our marketing dollars, I would think that would apply for it. So in addition to this matching grant that we're going to be applying for with IRRRB, that will be more infrastructure type project. But the marketing dollars are from kind of saving them up from the Explore Minnesota grant. They had a crisis marketing grant this year. And I got an email today from Nicole, our rep, saying that there's another $3,500 available in addition to the grant funding that we've already secured. And with our events being canceled, that money is easily reallocated towards the downtown committee and the we're still open Highway 210 project. So if we could come up with some creative campaigns and things that would apply under those grants, it's a reimbursement grant. So they don't give you the money up front. They reimburse you for anything that qualifies under it. So we could read through that, or I can go through and pick some highlight points for our next meeting and discuss how we want to move forward with marketing.
Bria, when is the grant that you're working on now due?
So it was actually due already back in like August or September, and there are a lot of funds available. I believe there's about $100,000 left in the pot for projects for applied in 2020 to be completed in 2021. So she said that if I could get it in by December, that we will be notified within a month if we get the funds, and then the project just needs to be started within 6 months of receiving the funds.
Okay.
And Jay, so I had invited Jay to the meeting also. He has his speaker isn't working very well, but Jay had kind of discussed that he had worked with the city before for some bike racks and benches. Is that correct? Yes. So we're not able to hear him, but Jay, if you could put into the chat section maybe just some information about the benches or that project that you did with the city, and maybe any additional spaces that would need bike racks or things to kind of give people a break if they're walking a long distance from where they're parking. If you had any ideas towards that. I know it's kind of difficult because your speaker's not working. I'm trying to find out where my chat function is. Oh, I've got it up here. So I'm going to stop the screen share for the. Okay, so it looks like they purchased 10 cans already, but discuss more options tomorrow if needed. Okay, we can follow up with you, Jay, on that, but All right. Well, I think that there were a lot of good ideas discussed, and Deb, thank you so much for joining us again and sharing your expertise on the do's and don'ts of road construction in the chamber world.
Yep. Happy if you've got any follow-up things, just let me know and I'll get it back to you.
Great. And then what was your email address? I'll save that in the comment section just in case anyone wanted to reach out to you.
That works. Great. Good luck. I know
Thank
it
you,
seems
Deb.
painful, but in the end, it will be worth it. It really will. So good luck.
Thank you so much for your time, Deb. Have a good night.
Yep.
Thank you, Deb.
Thanks. Yep. Bye-bye.
And thank you everyone for coming. I'll send an email to kind of follow up with what was discussed and let you know when our next meeting is. But I appreciate all the great ideas and the discussion. And hopefully we can continue to grow on the ideas and get more community members involved once it gets to crunch time.
Yeah, thanks for setting it up. I think we're in a good spot and we can do a lot.
All right, well, I'll let y'all go eat dinner or
I'll hug my kids.
yeah, watch your kids or
Mhm.
have a good night.
Yeah, you too, everybody. Nice to see you. See you, Rio.
Bye.